Cannon, former Senator of Australia, Datu Shri Sheikh Ahmed Awang, representative of Malaysian Consultative Council of Islamic Organization, and Dr. Rehana Binti Abdullah, Vice Chair, IPCHR, and Mechanism for Monitoring Human Rights Situation in the Indian occupied Kashmir. A very special thanks to the All Parties Parliamentary Group on Kashmir for speaking out against human rights abuses in Indian occupied Kashmir. By calling on the Indian government to inter alia repeal the draconian laws, ban use of pellet guns, open jails for inspection, and initiate a comprehensive public investigation into identities of bodies in mass and unmarked graves, the group has laid bare some of the worst human rights abuses being perpetrated in Indian occupied Kashmir. I feel empowered to be with you, both in my personal capacity as a Democrat, an ardent supporter of the Kashmir's right of self-determination, and as the foreign minister of a country that remains a party to the Jammu and Kashmir dispute. We are here to express solidarity and make common cause with all those who love and value freedom, despise oppression, and stand up for what is just and right. In Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, humanity is bleeding. The valley is burning. People are distressed. Under the heavy burden of alien occupation that grows more stifling and more suffocating with each passing day. Each passing day brings sordid news of rape, murder, killing, and grievous injury inflicted upon a hapless civilian population by Indian occupation forces armed to their teeth and unshackled by any restraint of civility or law, reason or compassion. Each passing moment unfolds new trials and tribulations, new tragedies and traumas. Yet, with each passing second, the reality of the Indian occupation becomes self-evident, that it is an occupation of a territory and a people alienated from and alien to India. And that no matter what depraved barbarities the occupation unleashes, Kashmiris will be masters of their own destiny. What, my friends, is the Kashmiris' cardinal sin, for which for 70 years now they are facing so heavy a retribution? Why with such surgical precision is an entire generation of young men and women being killed, blinded, maimed, and raped? Why is there a deafening silence, dogged denial, blanket censorship, and callous indifference to the plight of innocents in what is acclaimed to be the world's largest democracy? Why is this exceptional cruelty? It is because they seek their legitimate right to self-determination granted to them by numerous UN Security Council resolutions, or because their hearts and minds, bodies and souls yearn for living their lives as they want. Ladies and gentlemen, self-determination is not a gift or endowment. It is the most fundamental of rights, the most inalienable of freedoms. Some 70 years ago, when the United Nations was born out of the ashes of the World War, this right, this basic tenet of international law, was embedded into the Charter of the United Nations and repeated in subsequent affirmations, the International Covenants on Civil, and political rights and on social, economic, and cultural rights. 70 years ago, also the world adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, outlining the individual's rights and freedoms that every human being is entitled to, irrespective of color, race, caste, or creed. About the same time, the Indian military marched into the valley of Kashmir, triggering what has been the longest dispute on the agenda of the United Nations. For 70 years, the idealism and promise of the United Nations, the prospect of the collective conscience of man rising to the occasion and acting in unison, has repeatedly hit against the hard rock of realpolitik, the harsh reality of Indian occupation. It was India that committed to holding a free and fair plebiscite to determine the will of the Kashmiri people. It was Indian leadership that repeatedly reaffirmed this commitment. And it is India that has repeatedly reneged on its solemn commitments, choosing instead the destructive path of genocidal repression. I have 5 questions. 1. Where in the world will you find such a heavy concentration of armed forces equipped with draconian laws meant to institutionalize violence by these forces against an unarmed civilian population? I'm referring to the Armed Forces Special Powers and Public Safety Acts that give legal cover to armed personnel to assume at once the mantle of law enforcer, judge, jury, and executioner, and act with complete and unfettered impunity. Even under these laws, the central government has failed to grant approval for prosecution of a single case of human rights abuse, not a single prosecution, not one conviction. 2. Where in the world do you find mass graves? In its 2009 report, Buried Evidence, the NGO International People's Tribunal and Association of the Parents of Disappeared Persons investigated hundreds of mass graves throughout the occupied Jammu and Kashmir. It concluded that the bodies unearthed were of indigenous Kashmiri Muslims who had been killed by Indian occupation forces on the false pretext that they were infiltrators. 3. Where do you find mass rape and sexual abuse being used as an instrument of torture? The Kunan Poshpura incident that led to gang rape of over 100 innocent women by Indian Army personnel back in 1991 is without parallel in modern history. Its victims still cry out for justice. 4. Where is justice for 8-year-old Asifa Bano of Katwa, who was brutally raped to death? In India, processions were taken out in favor of the rapists. Elected members of government spoke out in their defense, and concerted efforts are being made, reportedly, to discredit the evidence and exonerate the criminals. 5. Under which canon of fundamental law is blinding of innocent protesters by use of pellet guns a justified action?
फिर मिलेंगे नई वीडियो के साथ। सब्सक्राइब करना ना भूलिए और बेल आइकॉन पर क्लिक करें ताकि हर वीडियो नोटिफिकेशन आप तक पहुंच सके।